We grow up surrounded by stories of what happens after we die. Heaven, hell, reincarnation, spiritual planes. The idea of some kind of continuation after death is one of humanity's oldest and most persistent beliefs. It promises that no matter how fragile life feels, there's a bigger, more permanent chapter waiting for us. But what if there isn't? What if death isn't a door to somewhere else, but the final page in the book? For many people, the thought is unsettling, even unbearable. The idea that life simply ends, no consciousness, no memory, no reunion with loved ones, can feel like falling into an endless void. But maybe that discomfort comes from the stories we've been told, not from the reality itself. The absence of an afterlife isn't a tragedy. It's a truth that, if we accept it, could actually make life deeper, more urgent, and more meaningful. First, let's acknowledge something. There is no credible evidence for any kind of life after death. None. Every claim, from near-death experiences to ghost sightings, collapses under scrutiny. Near-death visions are now well understood as brain phenomena, triggered by oxygen loss and neurochemical floods. Cultural differences shape these visions. A Christian may see Jesus, a Hindu may see Krishna, and a Buddhist may see serene landscapes. The fact that these visions align with prior beliefs rather than pointing to one universal truth tells us they're products of the mind, not glimpses into another world. And when we examine the arguments for an afterlife, they often hinge on a deep discomfort with finality rather than evidence. It's less about what's real and more about what people want to be real. The logic tends to follow emotional needs. I can't imagine my loved ones gone forever, so they must be somewhere. But reality doesn't bend to comfort. The sun doesn't rise because we want more daylight. It rises because of physics. From a scientific standpoint, consciousness is tied to the brain's physical processes. Damage specific regions, and memory, identity, and personality change or disappear. A brain starved of blood flow stops producing thoughts entirely. If consciousness can be switched off by anesthesia or head trauma, why expect it to persist after total brain death? There's no mechanism for thought without a working brain, and no reason to think it somehow survives the destruction of the only organ that generates it. Some might ask, without the hope of an afterlife, what stops people from falling into despair, or worse, moral chaos? But that fear assumes people only behave well out of fear of punishment or hope of reward. In reality, most morality comes from empathy, social contracts, and shared human needs. People help each other because we care, not because we're worried about cosmic scorekeeping. And here's a thought. The belief in an afterlife can actually cheapen life itself. If you think existence continues forever, this world becomes a temporary waiting room. Time feels less precious because there's supposedly an infinite amount ahead. But when you understand that this is it, this is the one shot, every day gains weight. Every relationship becomes priceless. Every moment you waste is one you can't get back. There's also a freedom in letting go of the afterlife narrative. Many religious traditions tie it to control, telling you how to live, who to love, what to believe, with the promise or threat of eternal consequences. Without that framework, your choices are yours alone. Your values don't have to be dictated by fear of supernatural punishment. They can grow out of compassion, curiosity, and reason. Even grief changes when you see life as finite. Losing someone hurts. That will never change. But instead of thinking of them as gone somewhere, you can think of them as part of the natural cycle. Their life was a unique, unrepeatable event in the history of the universe. They existed, they touched others, and their influence echoes in memories, actions, and even in small, unnoticed ways. The habits they passed on, the perspectives they shared. The beauty of their life lies in its limitedness, like a rare flower that blooms once. And there's another under-discussed point. Belief in an afterlife often feeds injustice. It allows people to accept suffering in this world because they believe wrongs will be made right in the next. This has been used for centuries to keep oppressed groups quiet. Slaves told they'd be rewarded in heaven. The poor told their hunger would be filled after death. But if there is no next life, the urgency to fix injustice here becomes undeniable. No one gets a redo. When we drop the afterlife, responsibility increases. There's no divine cleanup crew coming after us. If we destroy the planet, there's no heaven to move to. If we fail to create fair societies, no cosmic judge will fix them. That burden can feel heavy, but it's also empowering. It means what we do matters now, not later. And while some fear that meaning itself would vanish without an afterlife, the opposite is true. Meaning doesn't need eternity to exist. A song is meaningful even though it ends. A meal, a conversation, a sunset. Their value doesn't depend on lasting forever. In fact, it's their impermanence that makes them precious. If life went on forever, urgency and wonder would fade. Mortality is the sharp edge that makes life sparkle. There's a quote from philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. Life has no meaning the moment you lose the illusion of being eternal. He saw that confronting mortality forces us to create meaning ourselves, instead of passively inheriting it. We stop asking, what does it all mean? As if the answer is out there somewhere, and instead ask, what can I make of the time I have? Of course, there will always be the question, what if we're wrong? What if something happens after we die? The honest answer is, if that's the case, it will happen regardless of what we believe now. Refusing to cling to unproven ideas isn't about closing the door on possibility. It's about not letting wishful thinking dictate how we live. In a way, living without belief in an afterlife is like walking without a safety net. Every step feels more deliberate. Every choice feels more real. There's no illusion that you can come back and do it differently. This is the rehearsal and the performance rolled into one. The absence of an afterlife doesn't erase the value of existence. It makes life more astonishing. Against impossible odds, you were born. You get to think, feel, experience, and create. You get to be part of an ongoing story that started billions of years ago and will continue in forms you can't predict. And one day, yes, it will end. For you, and eventually for everyone. But that doesn't make it meaningless. It makes it ours. The real tragedy isn't death. It's living as if life is just a prelude to something else, and never fully inhabiting the years we have. What if there is no afterlife? Then this, right now, is your one and only chance. And that's more than enough reason to make it count.